Hi everyone. Today I'm going to talk about one of the product from Tanzu portfolio, which is Application Transformer for VMware Tanzu. Application Transformer for VMware Tanzu helps to modernize the existing monolith application that our clients are running. Now, in today's video, I'm going to demo this product, how it modernized the existing monolith application, how it containerized, what are the different steps involved. So what I have done, I have already installed App Transformer for VMware Tanzu, which comes in an OVA format. And once we have OVA in place, then we can deploy this product on a VMware environment. So this is my VMware environment. And as you can see here, I do have Application Transformer for VMware Tanzu, which is running here, right? It's very simple installation, and it's just like any other OVA file installation that you can import and deploy the OVA file, and that's all you have to do. And once the deployment is done, you can just access this IP address on a browser, and it will give you this particular screen. So once you log into this particular product, then you will be seeing this flow, right? So this essentially tells that in order to use Application Transformer for VMware Tanzu, these are the different phases that application need to go through, right? So for example, discovery. And then once discovery of application is done, we need to do the analysis application. And once analysis is done, then we need to transform. We need to basically containerize that application. So we are going to talk about each of them. Now, once you install this OVA file, initially you will not have any kind of application here. So in order to get the application data, we need to connect this with the vCenter, right? So that's what you are seeing here. And let's go here. I already have vCenter added, and it's very, very simple flow for adding a vCenter. So you just need to click add vCenter, give the IP address of FQDN of vCenter, then the name, and this name need not to match to what is your vCenter name. This can be any identifiable name. And you need to supply the credential for this vCenter environment and just say save. Once you do that, you will see the vCenter added here in the inventory, right? Before I talk about scan and some of these things, let's quickly look at what else you are seeing here. So once this vCenter is added, and once we are going to do, and when we are going to do the discovery or scan of the VMs within this environment, and this discovery can be done or scan can be done on a folder basis, or it can be done at vCenter level. So once it is done, then you are going to see those VMs under this virtual machine section, right? And that's what you are seeing here. Now, in these VMs, in one VM, for example, Ubuntu VM where you are running multiple software, and those softwares are discovered and displayed as a component here. And you can see here that the component name is this, which is associated to which virtual machine, right? So the software component that is running on the VM and VM running on a vSphere environment is known as component. Now, there can be several type of component, and in order to discover those component, we have something known as component signature. So these are the predefined, pre-created components signature that comes with the product itself. And there are many, as you can see here. But in addition to that, if you are dealing with a custom type of software, then you can go ahead and add a signature here, right? So adding signature is also a very straightforward process, but the signature, additional signature can be added too. Now, this set of components that you are seeing here, they may form an application, right? So let's say one application can have multiple components, maybe a front end, maybe a back end. That's what constitute the application, right? So this application can be either manually defined based on the component discovered, or this application can be created by utilizing the capability of vRealized Network Insight. And I'm going to talk about that too. And the application that you are seeing here is automatically created by understanding the flow that is discovered in the vRealized Network Insight. So vRealized Network Insight is also running in the same vSphere environment for the demonstration purpose, but this certainly can be handling maybe several other things in the client's environment. And then another key things here, we have credentials. So there are different type of credentials required. Credential needed for a virtual machine, credential needed for a vCenter, credential needed for Harbor Registry. So those credentials can be added here. There are also a global default credentials. So they are first read. I mean, if you have, let's say, you are defining a credential for Linux VM, and during the introspection, if you have not specified any credential and associated those credential to the VM, by default it takes a global default. It's more like a global variable that is there, right? So it's more like that. And then there is something known as policy. So this policy actually helps to define what kind of naming conventions, let's say, you want. For example, naming policy, right? It defines when you are having an application, how the application should be named, right? So those are some of the policies that are here, and certainly you can keep adding more and more. Now, this first portion was talking primarily about discovery. So once discovery is done, you got your application discovered here. Then the next thing comes analysis or analyze, right? So let's move to the analyze part. Now, the same application that you were seeing on the discovery, you are seeing that application here as well, right? And we have to do some introspection that I'm going to talk, but I'm just talking about the flow right now, how you will see those things at the UI. So this analysis, we are going to perform the analysis, and that's what you see here. So this thing comes after introspection, and then you can do the analysis. And once analysis is done, then you can move the application through the transform, last step. And once you move the application under transform, and you see here that application, then you are going to basically containerize that application. So you are seeing this grayed out because I have done once. But that's what the overall idea is. Now, there can be a scenario where maybe you do not want to follow this automated process and you want to follow a generic containerization approach. So that is also there. So for example, if you see here, the VM that is discovered here, I can go ahead and do a process containerization running on this VM. And that actually opens up the whole generic containerization flow, where you will be supplying a whole lot of argument, and eventually the application will be built and pushed to the container image registry. Now, let's look at a few more things before we get into the actual thing here. So in order to store the container images, once the containerization process is done, you have option here for image registry. By default, application transformer for VMware Tanzu comes with an embedded Harbor registry that you can see here. And if you want to install it, you can check mark that checkbox, which will be displayed to you during installation process of this app transformer OVA. And if you do not want, you want to add external registries like Docker Hub, you can see I have added here. And then the Harbor registry I have added here. So you can certainly go ahead and add many other registries, right? That you can use this simple button to add. It's very, very straightforward. And this is going to be required. So the idea of providing embedded Harbor registry is to enable you to quickly do this whole transform process, containerizing an application. And then certainly for the production grade usage, you can add your own registry here. Now let's take a scenario where I have two VMs deployed here. So one is application database that you are seeing here, and there is another web part of that application. So front end and back end. These are the two VMs that I have. And right now, this front end is talking to this database, right? So that's what this application is all about. Now, before we look at the application transformer, one thing I would like to let you know that I also have Virtualized Network inside in place that's up and running. And once I go here and I analyze this, you will see there is a whole lot of data it is collecting. But what I'm interested in here is to get the flow, right? So to get the flow of the application. So for example, I have one application defined here, and it's the same application that I was talking to you just now. What you will see here is this web tier is actually talking to a database tier here, and you are seeing this flow, right? So this flow you are seeing here, and exactly same thing that is being shown here as well. But what I'm trying to say is once I integrate this Virtualized network inside on my application transformer, and when I discovered these VMs which are running this application, then app transformer is going to create that application and it's shown based on this flow. And that's what I'm going to show you. And the same application, I'm going to basically do the introspection and also do the containerization. So let's come here. Now we added a vCenter, which is done. And I was saying the first thing that you can do is if you want to scan this vCenter, you can do scanning at a vCenter level. Or if you want to do a scanning at a specific folder level, you can do that too. So let's say I want to do a scan. Now what you are seeing here is during the scan, either you just want to do a scan, which means as a part of scan, it discovers the VMs which are running on this vCenter and add the inventory of those VMs under virtual machines section. Second, do you want to do introspection as well? And introspection is basically understanding what is inside that VM, right? So let's first do just the scan only. So I'm just going to do the scan. And once this process is triggered, you are going to see some task triggered here. And you see that, you know, the introspection was quick enough and it was done. And once it is done, you are going to see those virtual machines here. Okay, so these are the VMs. Now, these are the two VMs which we are most interested in. And in these two VMs, before we go ahead and do the introspection, we need to apply the credential. Okay, so either you have the global credentials in place, which can be utilized, or you can apply the credential from here. So these are the credentials that you have already created. And then you can just select those credentials. So for example, Linux VM or app VM in this case, right? So the credential is already supplied and you can see here it's green tick in place. So this is already done and you can see other details, right? Now ignore this replatform tag for now, and I'm going to come back and talk about this. But just a quick view, the app transformer for VMware Tanzu is aiming to assist client with different types of R that people are talking in this new cloud native world, right? Whether it is replatforming, refactoring, rehosting, those kind of assessment that this tool is going to do. So once the introspection is done, what you are going to see is if, for example, I go ahead and just click on this, you are going to see that there are different components which are discovered running on this VM. And these components are discovered based on the component signature that is created in this application transformer. Okay. Now, once this is done, and as you can see here, these components are discovered, then the important part is those components you are going to see in the components as well. So for example, you can see this WebDB and application DB, one Tomcat is running, another MySQL is running, and you can see these components are here in place, right? So next thing is application, because one component is not running the whole application, and there can be multiple components running application. So you can see here, this application was discovered automatically based on the flow that I was showing you in Virtualized Network Insight, right? So what you are seeing here, since I have integrated Virtualized Network Insight here, so one thing I forgot to tell you, but let me just tell you, you need to integrate the Virtualized Network Insight here. And again, it's again very straightforward, whether your VRNI is running on-prem or it's on cloud, and which vCenter you want to associate, you can just select this. And once that is done, you will see something like this. Another thing that you need to do is to discover the topology is click on this and say discover topology. And this discover topology needs the VRNI in place, right? And once you do this, then application will be discovered because this topology is available at the VRNI side. So once that is done, you will see this application here. And if you're wondering how the application name was defined, how it picked up, so it's actually picked up from the policy. So if you look at the naming policy for the application, you see here app as a prefix, then folder name in the vCenter, and then the random string. So if you look at this application, you see here app as a prefix and app t is the folder name, which is available on my vCenter. So you see here app t, and this was taken, and then the random random name here that got generated, right? So if I click on this, what you will see is the interesting part is under topology. But before I go to topology, you see here under overview, you are seeing these associated components. So one is the Tomcat, another is the MySQL database. Under topology, you are going to see this flow. Okay. And this flow is basically initially everything will be more of like white or kind of this core component. But once the transformation is done, it's going to show you like green, and you are seeing the meaning of these colors here. But the important part here is you see this application, and this application having two component, web and app database, and they are having a connectivity in place. And this connectivity is discovered based on the data that is on the VRNI. We are not telling anything here. It's auto discovered and showing the connection to us, which is actually one of the great things that I liked in the application transformer. Now, once application is discovered, that is great, but let's say the application you have to create. So you can say define application name. You can select the component, which component is going to be part of this application. And then the important thing is tag. So as I was saying you, there are different tags, and we will be looking at replatform. And once you tag this application, so for example, this one, and you can go ahead and assign a tag from here. Once the replatform tag is assigned, then your application become eligible for the analysis. And then it shows in the analysis part, right? So that's how I have assigned the tag. And once you assign the tag, discovery part is done. And now let's move to the analyze part. Now, since we have assigned that tag, we can see that application under analyze section under this application tab. And you can see here that under this application, there are components, some are analyzable and some component you cannot analyze. And what does it mean? So analyzable meaning this component is understood by application transformer, and it can go ahead and perform a deeper analysis of this component. But there are some components which are like given in the application transformer documentation that they cannot be analyzed as of now, and they can be directly promoted to the transform section, and they can be containerized if you want. But whatever is showing under analyze, before you basically containerize them, you need to analyze, right? So once you analyze, it actually gathers a whole lot of other detail of this component, and you will see this task start, and it takes some time, and it gets completed, right? Now, Once that is done, then we can move to transform. But you need to remember that move to transform is just one-time activity. Once you have moved under transform, you cannot bring that back here, but you can do analysis multiple times, right? There is no stopper in it. Since I have done it already, so you will see that under transform. Now, under transform, under application, if you go, you will see this application is showing under transform, okay? Now, the component that can be transformed is this one. And this containerized option is disabled right now, but once analysis is done, this will be enabled again, and then we can go ahead and run the containerization process. But what is important to understand is the component that was analyzed is, and the one that we have promoted under transform is now being shown here, right? And once this is done, this analysis part is done, then we are just going to trigger this containerized part, right? So let's just give it a few seconds, and then we will come back and do the containerization. So now you can see the analysis process is completed successfully, and it took some time. But now what you see here, the containerized option is now highlighted, right? So once analysis is done, containerized option will be highlighted, but you cannot move, you cannot bring this transformed application back here and do the transform multiple times. So that is something you need to remember. Now let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and try to run the containerization process. So once you click on containerize, it's going to give you a form that we need to fill in. So let me put this down. Now, another thing that you need to do is some of these artifacts. So for this application, there is a need of Tomcat and JRE artifacts. And those artifacts we need to upload prior to use here, right? So that is something you can do by going here. So if you look at under transform, you can see third-party artifacts. And whatever I have uploaded, you can see here. But these artifacts can be uploaded under this section, right? So these are some of the options that you can upload. And the guidance is given here. Basically, you can upload either zip file, a tar.zip file, and you can just select the version, and then you can say upload. And once you say upload, you need to just select that from your system, and then it will be uploaded. But once that is uploaded, then only you can go and containerize, because you need to select them during containerization process. So that I have already done. Now, here, I'll go ahead and select it. So this is the Tomcat version that I have, and this is the JRE version that I have. And I'll say continue. Now, what it is going to ask me is, what is the base image that you want to use to containerize this application component that you are going to containerize? So I'm saying that let's use Tomcat. And this image is going to be pulled from here. So source registry depends on your source registry. You may need to change the way it is written here, right? So since it is Docker Hub, I'm just specifying like this. And what is going to be the destination registry that image will be pushed after it is built. So I'm saying that I want in my Docker Hub, and I will use this tag, right? So once it is filled, let's continue. And it's going to give you some high-level summary. But you are seeing here, you're not actually writing a Docker file, right? To containerize that application, you're not writing a Docker file. It's all being done by this tool behind the scenes. So just by clicking and specifying some of these parameters, you will be getting the OCI compliant container image register, container image. And that image you can take and run on any Kubernetes platform, right? So once you say confirm, it's going to start the containerization process. Now, what you see here, there are two parts of the containerization process. One is build image, another is push image. So building image is actually going to create a Docker file behind the scene. It's going to take the input that we have specified. And then once the image is built, it's going to push that image to the destination registry that we have specified. So let's just wait for a few seconds, and it's not going to take more than a couple of minutes. So then we'll be back and see how it had pushed it. So you can see build image task is completed successfully and push image is going on. While that's running, let's look at what it did as a part of build image. So you see here, image build task started, build in progress, build got completed. But if you see the log, you see here, actually it created a Docker file, and the way you are seeing here is we are performing the Docker file build, right? So once you perform the Docker file build, it does all of it, and eventually it completes that build, and it tags that image, and then that tagged image will be pushed to the destination registry that we have specified. And once this push task is completed successfully, and you go back to your transform, and you go to the application, click on this, what you will see here, the image artifact. There are two things that will be pushed. One is OCI image, which is pushed like this, and another is image artifact. So what does image artifact contain? Image artifact actually contains the Docker file for you that it created, the tool created. It also gives you the deployment YAML file that you can use to deploy this containerized image that you have done. So let me just open the existing one. And once you click on the link, it gives you a zip file. And once you extract that zip file, you will see those contents inside that zip file. So it's in the process of pushing that image. So let's just give it a few seconds. So once the zip file is extracted, you will see here, these are the artifacts that is also being pushed, right? So for example, I was talking about deployment YAML file. So you can simply see the deployment YAML file, and it's straightforward. You can certainly go ahead and modify some of these parameters to suit your deployment. And then you can just deploy this by running kubectl command, right? So it's not just giving you OCI image, it's also giving you a whole lot of these things. It's making your life easy so that you can go ahead and quickly deploy that. Let's also look at the Docker file. And if you look at the Docker file, actually it wrote this Docker file for you, right? So, and this Docker file can be also modified based on if you have some certain standard you want to follow, this can be certainly modified. So that's all I wanted to talk. The point here is it's making your life easy by discovering the application, analyzing the components running within the application, and then containerizing that application in an automated way. Another thing I was talking actually is if you want to do a process containerization, right? So let's say one VM is running maybe hundreds of different component. Maybe this automation is not discovering that because the signature is not there or due to whatever reason, though you can just go and add a signature. But if it is not being done and you want to follow the generic containerization process, then I'll just let you know, maybe just show you this process as well. So the VM that is showing within discovery here, what you need to do is you need to just tag this VM with the replatform like this one. And once you tag this one, you don't have to analyze, right? Because we are analyzing applications. So we are just going to see this particular VM under transform, under this virtual machine section. So this VM is showing here, and now you can just click on process containerization. And once you say process containerization, maybe you want to give image template name. For example, let's say demo template. And I want to say Docker Hub. So let's say this was Apache latest. We'll say click validates. So it's not there. Maybe we'll say Tomcat or CentOS. So Tomcat is there. So it's saying successful, and click on save. Then click on next. What it is going to do is it's actually going to discover all the processes running inside your application, right? And let's say this Python. Once you click on this, it's going to get a whole lot of these details here. And this eventually will be utilized in the Docker file. You can also add or update the existing environment variable. You can add a new variable as well, which will be eventually passed to the Docker file. And say save. Click on next. Then you have to select the file or folder that you need to include in the containerization process for that application component or additional one. So for example, let's say I want to say /user, right? And certainly based on your application, you need to select the right one, but I'm just showing you that how the flow looks like. So say save here and click on next. And if you have to override anything, right? So for example, like the third-party artifacts, the files, some of those things, if you want to override, you can just do here, but I don't have to do any. So just click on next. Now, what is going to be the entry point, right? So entry point, if you have specified entry point that you want, once the content image is built, you can just upload that here. By clicking on this, it will ask you to upload from your system that you can do. And once that is done, click on save and click next. It's actually going to generate a Docker file for you here. And this Docker file, certainly you can modify here based on your needs, so that once you click on next, it's actually going to ask you that what is the tag you want. So let's say you said, for example, Dinesh Tripathi 30 test.latest. And what is going to be my destination registry? This is the one. I said validate, validation passed. And once you say containerize, actually it's going to start building the containerized image, right? So that's what it does. And this process, you can certainly customize at each and every point. This is very straightforward, but this is actually going to help you to do the way you want to do containerization, not the way tool does, right? So depend on the use case and scenario, you may have to use this path. So I just wanted to let you know. So that's all for this demo. This is very, very straightforward and simple tool, yet very powerful feature that it provides. So feel free to try this out in your environment and just comment on the video in case you are facing any problem. Thank you so much for watching.